Anyway, so guys, welcome. I'm glad to be able to sit and talk to you guys. Father's Day is approaching, and some people on our staff had a genius idea of just getting some of us together to really be able to talk about our experiences, some good, maybe some not so good, as fathers, and even with our fathers. And I don't want to presume that everybody knows the history of each of us, our parenting, how we were parented. So I'll kick it off and talk about my dad. I grew up with my father and my mother. My dad was interesting in that my dad was a provider, and my dad was physically present, but wasn't always present, if you know what I mean. And I think for most of my life, I harbored that against him. And then I became an adult. And something shifted when I became an adult, and I was able to see my father not just as my father, but as a human. And it gave me a level of grace for what he couldn't give, but also a level of gratitude for what he did actually give. And so I think I spent a lot of years kind of fighting against what he wasn't instead of embracing what he was. And I think that has kind of shaped how I deal with myself. I give myself a little more grace than I probably would have a few years back. And how I extend that grace to other people, because I recognize humanity for what it is: flawed, broken, but also beautiful. So that's my story. Let's go clockwise.
Well, me next. So I didn't live with my father growing up. I lived with my mother, so it was just me and her. My dad really wasn't that present. I really only saw him like on the weekends. But even when I did see him, it was like an hour or two for that weekend. So I definitely held a lot of resentment towards him, but like you said, when I became an adult, I understood that I have flaws, so I know that he does too. Mm-hmm. I think I'm definitely in a space now where I've forgiven him, and yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have questions already.
Sure.
Okay, so I think even I said like, hey, I became an adult, and it kind of shifted. It almost can give the impression that you just come into adulthood and all of a sudden it just suddenly goes away. How did you get to the place where it was like, oh, he's a human being, and I'm gonna be all right?
I think I followed some of the patterns that he went through when he was like my age. And actually I had a conversation with my wife, she's my fiance then, she was like, you're just like your father. And I was like, oh wow, I don't want to hear that at all. And that like really crushed me. So I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's like when I really started to humanize him, I was like, that's not for me. So
yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I grew up with my dad and my mom, similar to you also. I grew up with both of my parents. My dad, he was very present, he just kind of made sure that he was involved in everything that me and my sister did. My dad was very adamant about just us learning about the world around us. He was like big on that, like, hey, make sure you learn about the world, like learn about what's culture about. And I think for him, you know, he came from Jamaica and he had to kind of build his life from the ground up. So I think he wanted to make sure that we took advantage of the opportunities in this country. And with that, my dad was very, very hard. Like, I feel like my father was like very hard on me. And I think as I got older, like he was just like, his thing was like, you are not going to fail in life. And so I felt like for some time, I felt like it was hard to measure up to his standards of like just what it meant to be successful, what it meant to be a man, what it meant to navigate life, to be a father eventually, or a husband. And it wasn't, and again, I think it wasn't until like I became a man that I understood like, oh, why or how my dad took the stance that he took. You know, I think he really wanted to make sure that we were okay. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a two-parent household. And my dad was, I think, I want to say he was present, but I think it wasn't in any of the ways that I wanted him to be present. And I think there were even probably times where, a lot of times where I resented his presence. He was very hard, but also very order and structure oriented, which I definitely appreciate, like a lot of those aspects now. I cannot function in chaos. But also, I think as an adult, I do have more of an understanding where it's just like, oh, nah, life was happening. Life was life. And so I understand that, like, part of that was just like, oh, no, he was angry, you know? And there's a level of compassion that comes with that. But also taking the meat and spitting out the bones, like in a lot of what I observed in correlation to what I understand now, it's not that his feelings weren't warranted, but I think sometimes it's the way that he carried out like some of his feelings, or maybe projected. And I think that helps me. I try not to use that as a filter for how I father. But it is something to look back on, like, you know, and having conversations with him now, but also in how I can not repeat some of those same missteps, I would say. I mean, nobody's perfect, but
Yeah, but I think,
know better.
yeah, and I think something that you said that I think is difficult for most people, male or female, is to not parent or try to not parent from the space that you've been parented.
Which can be dangerous.
Right. And so I guess my question to you is, how have you navigated through how you were raised and now trying to raise another child? How have you,
Jesus.
yeah, like, how has that played out for you?
So, off rip, I was scared to, growing up, I was afraid to approach my dad for anything. And I think having kids actually, it shifted my perspective. If anything, I think I have to address this first. It shifted my perspective of who God is. Seeing how innately my kids interact with me. And so
Loved it.
I think from that place, I go to God differently, and everything that I am, I want to say, like, anxious about, or maybe I have questions about, or maybe I feel like I might not have had the best model, or maybe the model that I would have wanted, I typically just take those things to God. And like, I don't know fully what the best way is, but I also don't want to operate or father out of a place of fear. And so my prayers usually give me the help me to navigate through that process in a healthy way, but in a way that honors you, so that they'll have the example of how they can come to you as well.
You don't want to navigate out of fear, right? But do you? Right? Do you have you found yourself, you're on the way, have you found yourself operating as a father from a space of fear?
Yes.
And
What does that look like? Yeah.
Like, what does that look like?
I would say the first time that I had to deal with that was when Arrow was born, like the first day. And I remember, like, a friend of mine, he was like, yo, congratulations, you're a father, whatever. Like, how does it feel? I'm like, I'm scared because I asked him, how do you raise a boy to become a man when like you're still trying to figure out how to be a man? And I feel like those moments where I feel like that moment I was like, yo, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't have a blueprint. I don't know what to tell him. I don't know like
anything.
I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And so and I feel like there are moments where I still have to navigate through that fear. I feel like every year, every time he gets older, it's like another year of like, okay, like how I'm gonna relate to him when he's 5 or when he's 4 or when he's 3. And I think some of what has helped me right now is like, God, yes, of course, Jesus Christ, hallelujah, prayer, and then also like asking older men that have kind of been in my position, like, yo, hey, like, how did you navigate this? Like, what did you do? Like, these are things that I'm trying to figure out. Like, what did you do? Like, how did you model this for your son? Like, how did you ever feel that way? And if you felt that way, can you give me like some scriptures I need to read so I can figure this out?
Right. So you haven't gotten there yet, but you have a couple of days, literally, any day now. Are you struggling with any fears?
Absolutely. I'm struggling with, especially if I have a boy, like, I don't want him to feel like when I was a little child, you know what I mean? Like, I want to be present, but not overly present. I want to be somebody you can come and speak to, because I didn't do it with my father either.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like I just don't want to mess his or her life up.
Yeah.
And that's like a real fear of mine. So that's been like really my prayer point, like, Lord, help me navigate through this, because this is something new, my first child, so.
Okay, but wait. So you can't answer this yet. You can not yet, because you got 2 girls. You've got a son. I've got a son. You have maybe a son. Maybe. Is there a difference for you? Because you kind of just said, "Hey, I'm kind of afraid that if I have for specifically a son." I had the same thing. Like, I had no concerns about my daughter, but when my son came, there was like what am I supposed to do with you? What is this, and what am I supposed to do with you? You too?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is that?
It's the devil. No, I think, you know what it is? And it's like, Jesus loves everybody, But I think it's specifically with sons, it's the pressure of like, you got to make sure you carry the legacy. Like, you want to make sure that you're passing down something that he can take on and carry. You know what I mean? I feel like those are the questions that are the things that come up in my head all the time with Arrow. It's like, okay, now I gotta tell you that you're a leader, because I want you to make sure that you know that you're a leader. I need to tell you that you have the strongest voice in the room, because I want you to know that you have a strong voice in the room. Like, there's things like that, and it's like, I think it's like the responsibility to make sure, maybe this is wrong, but it's like the responsibility to make sure, like, that my son is still carrying this legacy, whatever that is.
Oh my God, I think I got it, and it's the saddest thing ever. I think your son is your do-over.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And it's actually terrible news.
Yes.
I think your son, you feel subconsciously that this is my opportunity to right all of my wrongs.
Right.
That whatever I didn't get, you've got to get.
Right.
Whatever I didn't achieve, you've got to achieve.
Right.
Wow.
And it's super dangerous, because one is a lot of pressure for yourself, but also think about the amount of pressure that unintentionally we're putting on them. And I think even as we tell our own stories, I think we've experienced that, right? That order and structure that you talked about. I think some of that was, hey, I got a lot of stuff wrong, and I don't want to see, even stuff with your father, like why are we so rigid? Why do I have to learn everything about the world? Because he felt like he was disadvantaged when he got here.
Right.
I came from another country. I was at a disadvantage. You won't ever be at a disadvantage, because I'm getting to do over what I missed out on through you. What in the world? That's a lot of
It's
pressure.
the sins of the father,
Yeah.
you know, or like, you know, that's sad.
This didn't go the direction we thought it was going to go. Yeah.
Got that.
No, but I think it's a lot. I think that we, especially because a lot of us don't actually deal with our stuff, right?
True.
And so we end up applying the same stuff that was applied to us onto our children, and it might come in a different package, but it's really the same stuff. And so I think my question is, like, what do you think you're doing about that right now? Like, are you being intentional in any way about dealing with some of that stuff so that we don't then apply the same stuff to our children?
Yeah, I can answer. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I actually got deliverance from that. So
Hello.
Yeah, it's for everybody. It's in the room if you need it. But no, I really got deliverance from that because my main thing is like I don't want to be like how my father was. I don't want to put any pressure or anything on this child that they don't even deserve or need. And a main thing for me was like I just want my child to receive love off rip. I don't want them to do like what I went through and be like nobody loves me. It's just me. So I really want them to receive love from people and really receive love from God.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
So it's funny. I was actually talking to one of my brothers about this. It was just like, yo, every time we have deliverance service, you always sign up. Yes, I'm signing up every single time. Gotta make sure ain't nothing in there. Gotta make sure ain't nothing hiding. Huh? No open doors, none of that foolishness. But yeah, no. So deliverance is definitely a thing, which I thank God for. But also, I am in therapy, and just trying to. So supportive. But yeah, I think that it's an important step to take. I just want to make sure that I am not perpetuating anything, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I don't bleed all over my children. And so just being intentional about talking all those things out and even getting into like those micro details of like, oh wow, I didn't know that was in there, or this affects that and that's why I do that, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And so there's that, but also I think I'm intentional, I should say we're intentional, my wife and I, about just like communicating with each other and, you know, just what the culture of our home looks like, and how we're curating that for our children.
Oh, y'all some new men.
So
Curating the culture in our home. What? That's a new
lot of
generation.
things that we, that we reiterate constantly to Harper is, be kind, be gentle, behave. You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes she has the propensity to be a little feisty. She really, really does. And I know that she understands because then we say that, and then she's very affectionate, and then she brings back them smacks that she had in the palm of her hand, and she replaces them with cuddles and different things like that. And so, yeah.
You guys answered it so well. Thank you so much.
What are you doing?
Right now,
And the answer might be nothing.
yeah. I mean, well, the first step for me was really forgiving my dad. That was like the step for me, like forgiving my dad for, the pressure that I felt, from trying to please him or whatever. And I think the second thing for me right now is helping is just having conversations like these a lot more with like trusted voices in my life, and just saying like, hey, like I don't know anything right now, and I need help navigating this as a father. I need help navigating this even as a husband too. And I think for me, being vulnerable and being honest in spaces like this has helped me a lot.
I think one of the greatest lessons that I have received as a man is the value of being able to say I don't know. I think I don't know opens you up to learning. I think when you know, you don't seek out, knowledge, but also there's a freedom in not knowing. Right, there's a freedom. I don't feel the pressure to have to know everything, and I get the opportunity to glean from people in a way that I wouldn't if I was already decided that I already got it and I'm good. And so I think there's a freedom in not knowing. It doesn't have to be like this thing of bondage where you feel like I gotta hide the fact that I'm scared and frightened and don't know what I'm doing out here in these streets. So, good.
I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
With the understanding that when you have multiple children, you can't parent them the same way.
No,
because
sir.
They're two completely different.
And my kids are very different.
Yeah. And so I think to that point, how different is it for you parenting your son as opposed to it is parenting your daughter? Like, what's the difference?
So I don't even know if for me, I don't know if it's a son and daughter thing as much as it is a personality thing.
Yeah.
They are very different kids. My daughter is super social and like wants to talk, wants to be around people, and like that's her talk all day and won't stop. And that's her, and very inquisitive.
Very smart.
Super smart, but like we're gonna talk and process through it. My son is actually on the low, a genius, but super quiet, reserved, laid back. I will figure it out. Don't talk to me about it, but I will figure it out on my own, and then I'll come back to you and let you know the details of the whole thing. And so I think it's about giving them space to be who they are, right? And so not trying to push him into being more social, not trying to push her into not being social, but allowing them the space to be who they are. And then I think finding moments to then expose them to something that they are not, right? So what I mean by that is Jonathan is less social than Brianna is, but I don't want him to get to a place where he's just gonna rest in that I'm gonna fall all the way back and never expose myself to anything more than what I think I already am. And so I think there's ways to gently challenge them to be a little bit more than what they thought they are, because I don't think we are as linear as we think that we are, that this is just who I am. I am an introvert or I am an extrovert. I think we've started to own some labels that actually have limited us, and I think we are much more complex than what we give ourselves credit for. I think everybody kind of acknowledged that there was something that was missing from our childhood, and guess what? I got a news flash for you. Fast forward, our children are going to say something was missing from the childhood, no matter how. And I think that's another thing that's given me peace. Like, I recognize that no matter how great I am, something's going to be missing. What, in the absence of what we needed, my hope is that you understood God to be Father and to be the gap filler. Tell me about that in your life. How did that show up in the absence of what you needed? How did God show up in the absence of what you needed?
For me, he showed me that he's a 24/7 God. He's not just I'm gonna see you on Sunday for a few hours, send you back home with your mother type of God. And like I'm gonna chase you down, and I'm gonna really show you that I love you, and my love is authentic, and you don't really have to do anything to receive it. Just accept it.
That's strong. That's strong.
That's heavy.
How did God show up in your gaps?
God showed up for me by helping me just see that that He just loves me just for who I am. That I don't have to perform my way for His love. I don't have to be a certain way for Him to accept me. And even if I do the most dumbest things in the world, like God will always be there for me. And I feel like He's shown me that, like, in personal encounters. Woo! This is terrible! Oh my gosh! Yeah, He showed me this through personal encounters and encounters with people. And just stay right there.
answer this question?
I mean,
I
you can
think-
say he hasn't shown up if that's what your answer is.
I feel like that would just bust a hole in the ground. Yeah, they can clean that up. I think in a similar sense, he's always been there. Affirmation, like words of affirmation in time that I would spend reading the word and different things like that. Yeah, there were always just things that used to stick out to me that would just bring me peace.
Any last thoughts from anybody? Anybody want to say anything? Question anything before we wrap up?
Happy Father's Day to all fathers out there.
Hello.
You're loved. God loves you. You're doing great. Keep it up.
I love that, and you better clap for yourself.